Shauna Dean, and this is Azur Tanya, aka Michael Dean, and we work together as a team. We work as representatives of the Iyani Inner Earth Council and the Emerald Order Melchizedek Cloister Elohai Elohim of the higher density fields. I won't get into who and what they are because I think most people have at least read something where you have an idea of what that is. All right. Now, this weekend we are introducing something called, well, it was starting out as the Dance of Life. But then it was upgraded to the Dance for Life for various reasons that have to do with our atoms. And we'll get into that tomorrow as far as the upgrade. The Dance for Life program is interesting. The Iyani have been promising that we would be able to get this translation off the Cloister Doratura plates for, they said about the end of February we would be able to get it. Well, we just got it down in the last 2 weeks. There was a whole bunch more information. There was more detail than they had let me know about. The Dance for Life program is part of a 4-step program that I just found out about 2 days ago, that there's like 3 other levels to this. It's an intensive program. It's simple enough where it's something that a person who would like to teach some of this information to other people, to like cold groups and that kind of thing, which can be very challenging if they haven't read Voyager's books and that kind of thing. It will be simple enough to do that, but also sophisticated enough where you're going to be teaching them something and you're going to be learning something as well. So people who have come to this, to the Dance of Life, to learn how to teach other people, because that's part of what this is about, this will be a good program for that. But it will also be a program that has a distinction of having a level of introductory material that far surpasses most other programs that are out there, supposed advanced levels. So you'll get the best of both worlds. You'll get the simplicity, and simplicity, when I'm talking about simplicity, is those of you who have followed this work at all know there are some very, let's say, controversial aspects to the information when we get into the forbidden and lost history, when we get into the current and contemporary drama and what we're walking around in the middle of. That information can be very intimidating to just about anybody that's coming in cold into one of the groups that hasn't read Voyagers or hasn't read any of the books. So it's going to be simple to present this information because it isn't getting in this course, and I'm going to even try as I'm speaking with you. So if you find that you're used to me talking more about some of the agendas that are going on, we're taping this, and this tape will be available to other people, and we're hoping to have it as an introductory tape, that if anybody wants to teach, they could get the tapes or whatever, and that would help them teach, which means I'm going to try to keep off the tape any of the more controversial history and that kind of thing that would, kind of rattle somebody new coming in. Because the teachings that the Melchizedek Cloister are bringing through, I am so grateful to have these. These are the advanced level Master's Ascension teachings. I know that. I know it from memory because I remember different lifetimes in which I've had direct experience with them. These teachings work. It's a gift that they're being brought back. And it's a shame that right now on the planet so many people have been mind programmed into other dogmas that they just will immediately push away the truth that would actually set them free if they worked with it, if they find out about the controversial aspects first. We did it the hard way. The reason why we began, in 1999, we began with the Voyagers book releases. They were not kindergarten level, they were not introductory level, but they were not too hard because things were a little more calm in the world at that time. But we didn't begin with simple, here's like Ascension Training 101. We started with more sophisticated material because it was made to go out first to the indigo children who had 6-strand activation in their DNA templates and probably didn't know it. But they would be able to pick up that higher level information faster than regular mainstream people. It was interesting because in doing it that way, the people that would come to the workshops were the people that were the souls here, the sleeping avatars that were on their wake-up cycle. So we started to wake up the ones that have the higher soul contracts, the higher service contracts on the planet, by bringing the harder work through first. And it progressively got harder from there. I mean, it's harder in terms of sophistication and as far as detail and as far as, it can be overwhelming when you look at the body of work that's been given to us since 1999. Now it's time to make the work available to other people who aren't quite ready for some of the heavy stuff. People who are very happy with, sticking with the Bible or whatever other book, where if you say anything against the Bible, if it's not in the Bible, they don't want to know. Well, some of them are in a space where we have no disrespect for the Bible. In fact, what we teach is almost a melancholy little bit mourning toward the Bible, because the Bible used to be a beautiful book before the Council of Nicaea got a hold of it. So we don't have the teachings that we represent aren't against the things that other people are believing. But if they see certain parts of them without seeing the other parts of them first, some people get that idea, and then they get turned off. And if they used the information, just the ascension information itself, they would be able to make huge steps in progress in their own beings. They would be able to clear their fields. They will be able to start having a direct and personal connection to God, not just having to go to church and have somebody else make that connection for them. So this program is specifically to take the best of the ascension teachings and the progressive levels of them that we're going to be given. So we're going to learn new things as we go along too and be able to teach them, but in a framework that we don't have to get in to the more controversial subject matter. Like when we do the tapes, this part of the introduction, we can take that off the tape. It doesn't need to be there. We would like these tapes to be for you, so you can take them if you want to give a class, and you have a bunch of new people, friends and stuff coming over, but you know that they're attached to their different belief systems, but you think they could still like some of this. You could show them the tape, say, here, check this out, and here's what you do with this. So I will try my best to keep it that way. It's difficult because I'm used to speaking my truth as I know it, which means I've gone through this whole thing since 1999 with no holds barred. As soon as the information was given to me, I would pass it on to the people who cared enough to come and hear it, because I'm not the kind of person that likes to hold information back from people. If I know, I want to tell you. If it's something that's important, I would like you to know. So there was an agreement that the guardians and I had. Don't tell me anything you don't want them to know. If there's anything that's too scary or too big or they can't handle right now, that probably means I can't do too well with it either. And even if I can, if I know about it, I'm going to want to tell them. So we've worked this way, throughout throughout the time. This isn't going to change, but what is going to change is having a sensitivity to the people who could benefit from the ascension teachings that we have to offer. And I know the quality of them, or I wouldn't have been able to speak them as I have for the last couple of years. But to bring these to the people in a way, they can learn about the other stuff. The books are out there. They want to learn about the history, they can go get one of the other books if they're really that interested. And if they want to get, upset and turned off, let them do it then, if that's what they need to do. But in the meantime, they might learn something that will be just the something that will take them into a place where if they're being messed with, or if they're really on a path that they think is the right one but is harmful to them, they will be able to make a better choice and have stronger fields and clearer consciousness to make that choice with. So the teachings will always be available publicly and to everyone, but putting them in a way where different levels of consciousness, where different levels of awakening can respond to them is what we're trying to do. Now, the Dance for Life course is interesting. So as I said, there are 4 levels of it. They had told me about the Dance for Life several months ago, but what they didn't tell me was it was part of a larger thing. There were 2 things they had mentioned to me. One was about a year ago, and they talked about the Maharata texts, which were the original translations made off of the CDD plates in 246,000 BC. They were books that were made then. They were written, handwritten. They weren't, they didn't have technologies in the same way we did. They had some advanced ones, but they didn't have typesetting and those kind of things. So these were handwritten volumes of pure translation in the Anahazi language of the CDD plates and all of their records. Now, they had told me, I think it was about a year ago, that I had the contract on several of the first books to bring through the English translations on the Maharata text. And they didn't tell me when that was going to start. The first one, the first Maharata book, and the books, when we say book, we're not talking about book. We're talking about what would be volumes here. And if you think about Iani and you think about inner earth people and you think about sizes of things and people, they're very big. They have more DNA. They're taller than we are. Their hands are huge compared to ours. Their books are huge compared to ours as well. All right. So I knew that the Maharata text teachings were going to be forthcoming at some point, but there were several other projects that were being worked on in the meantime. What I didn't know was that Dance of Life is part of the beginning of bringing through the Maharata texts, and I learned that in the last couple of days. Right? The Maharata texts, and I think later we'll go through a little bit of the history on them. And for this introduction, I don't think you're going to find out, I don't think this is going to be on the tapes that will go with like the teaching series that you want to take in. So I will just be able to kind of talk with you and about several different things this evening. But if you're going to order the tapes from this workshop that will be the teaching tapes for classes you want to give. That will start with tomorrow. So if I come in and say hi, introduce myself again as if I never saw you, know why. All right, because tonight I want to be able to speak with you a little more freely. I would also like to be able to cover with you tonight. Some of the people from Canada were the first to see this information. It's information that was put in a supplement to the Templar manual that has to do with the different attempts at bringing through Mahabharata text translations, when they were given, in what culture, and what time period, and what happened to them, basically. So we'll go through a little bit, if there's time tonight, a little bit of that, so you have some idea of the significance of this work. This workshop is the beginning introduction of the material contained in Book 1 of the Mahabharata text. Book 1, if I can find the title, is called Reinstating Personal Divinity. And it has, there's a whole new level of teachings. It's like even if we weren't trying to do the easy course so the beginners could come in, the beginners are actually coming in at the most advanced level, but without the controversial stuff that, will upset their belief systems before they even know what they're looking at. These teachings have to do with something called the radial body, which is a part of the anatomy, of our 15-dimensional anatomy, that we haven't talked about yet. The radial body is the key to manifesting. And we're going to cover what the radial body is in the Dance of Life course, or Dance for Life course. We're also going to begin the process of what's called radial body activation. The radial body gets right down into, literally, the atoms that you're walking around with in your body. There's something called the neutron window, that in the center of the nucleus, in your neutrons, in your nucleus of your atoms, there's supposed to be a thing that works there called a neutron window, which is the part of the physical anatomy that allows certain frequencies and currents of energy to come through physically in the biology, that allows for cellular transmutation to take place. So you can not only activate your light vehicle, your Merkaba, around your body, but you can activate the ones inside of each of your cells. So you can take your body with you when you go on projection or go through a Stargate. We're going to begin learning this process, and it's fascinating information. When it was coming through, literally, it was on security clearance. Part of it's on security clearance. The other part has to do with this particular aspect of the teachings that we're going to go through and begin with Dance for Life. Weren't supposed to be given here until 2008. Here we go again, another acceleration. Yeah, it's been funny because of the drama that's taking place behind the scenes on the planet. There are things that are being done by the Christos races to help the planet get through the Stargate cycle, and then there are things being done to try to counter that. And then, by negative forces here that are trying to cause problems on the planet. I won't get too heavily into that. Most of you have some idea of what I'm referring to. Now, because of the frequencies that are supposed to be coming in, and then the counter ones that aren't supposed to be there, the next level of what's supposed to be there has to come in faster to try to undo the damage that was done by the frequencies that aren't supposed to be being sent here. What it's creating is literally leaps in time. What we're literally like doing 3 years for every one or so. So the information now has been very difficult. It's really bizarre this time to do the translation for this workshop. They'd promised me, you'll get Dance of Life, the end of February, you'll be able to release it. And it was supposed to be an easy program. Most of the techniques were going to be ones you've already been familiar with, that we're going to show all of us how to put them in a sequence and into a course of study that you could easily teach it to other people and also integrate it into your own daily life in an easy manner. Well, you're going to get that, but you're going to get a whole lot more. Oh boy. The information on here right now, as far as charts and graphs, we'll see what happens in the next 2 days, because I have about 500 pages of yellow pads with notes all over them. This was the hardest transmission from the plates that I've ever taken. It was part from the plates, it was part from the books, and part being stepped down by one of the Iyani named Ma'a. The reason it was so difficult to bring the information through is this information, the plates themselves, are time-coded, which means they carry certain frequencies that the planet's not supposed to have activated in the planet until a certain time. So if you're trying to get a certain level of information, but those frequencies aren't alive or awake in the planet yet, you'll get only what the planet can hold. So it was like if you can imagine a transmission off the plates as a frequency, a cord of energy that comes in, and it runs through the DNA and through the language patterns, so I can get a linear, singular linear line of information out. It was like 10 different cords had come down, and then it was like somebody was cutting them. and they were fraying, where I had like 5 different pages going at once on 5 different subjects. And I don't think Az has ever seen me quite the state I was in the last week. I was exhausted. I would have to lay down after about a half an hour, like literally go horizontal to stabilize my fields again, because it was so difficult to bring the information through and sequence it. So the information, it's still coming in, but we've made quite a bit of progress. By the time before you leave here, there are going to be 5 new techniques that are introduced they involve something called the Manau codes, M-A-N-U, Manu, Manau, however you want to pronounce that. The Manau codes are the highest or most powerful. Now, we've been working with Vecca codes before, which we'll talk about more in sequence as we go into this program. The Vecca codes are the most powerful mathematical programs that the body runs on. And when we use Vecca codes, like the Bivecca, the Trivecca, and now the Akasha that we got when we were in Peru, these do very particular things with the radial body. And we'll learn more about what that is tomorrow, too. But there are one set of codes that go with the 12 Vecca codes. There's a set of 12 Vecca codes, and we only have 5 of them that we've been given so far. The Manau codes are the codes that control the atoms, the atomic structure, the subatomic structure in the body. They're the codes that have the ability to open what are called primal forces. Now, in our other workshops, we have covered primal substance, we've covered primal order, we've covered primal currents, we've covered primal just about everything. So you get the basic idea of the structure of what your relationship to the universe is and how your anatomy fits in. There's one last element, which are called primal forces. There's a difference between a force and a current. The force is the consciousness, the living consciousness field that's part of God and that you're part of and that's part of you as well, that is behind all the rest. The part that sets intention and holds intention in the body. They are living forces of consciousness, and we are made of them. We're going to get into the primal forces this time and learn those currents. When we learn about the currents of primal force that are the blanket that the primal frequencies of our, like Kundalini frequencies and Kirashan Kundalini, that they run on, the things behind those that support those, the living consciousness that our bodies are composed of. When we begin to explore these, we're going to find some amazing things. We're going to find out there's a lot of associations you'll be able to see, because there are names for all of these currents in each dimensional level of them. We begin with the Manu, the Mane, and the Ire. And if you look at those words, Ire is E-I-R-A. When it comes down into the lower frequencies, it becomes the Eros that some of the ancient teachings used to talk about. When you look at the spelling of the word Mane, M-A-N-A, that is the larger consciousness current, out of which a word called Mana comes from. The Mana has been in the ancient Hebrew text and several others as what is it? It's the thing that allows the body to go through stargates, to ascend. All right, so we're going to be starting to talk about these, and there are basically 15 primal forces. They're all out of 3 forces, and those 3 forces are all out of 1 force, but they break down into 15 forces of consciousness that are moving through us. There's systems out there that were taught by the Anunnaki people that were called the science of the rays. They have 7 rays in their world. That's what happens when you cut your DNA off at like the 11.5 and you can't pull the rest of them. We'll talk about the 15 rays and the fields that are up above and beyond those. Why it's useful to learn about these. We'll learn about where chi fits, where ki fits, where something called Reiki fits. And then when you put Rei and Ki together, you find out what Reiki is about. You'll learn about the word prana and where that fits. Also the word Mira and Maya, because these are names of currents of consciousness that flow through the body. So when we learn about radio body, when we learn about dance of life, we're going into the whole next level of what it means to be a being on the path of ascension. This is where ascension becomes a physical, real physical possibility. We're going to learn through this course how to build something called the Akasha Merkaba. Now we'll also find out what the word Akasha means, where that word comes from, what it means, because it goes back to those primal forces. The Akasha Merkaba is very special. I don't know, is there anybody that hasn't looked at anything on Merkaba? Anybody completely unfamiliar with Merkaba here? Wow, this is good. I love it. Okay, so most people know that when we talk about Merkaba, it's those fields around the body, and most people have seen enough things out there where they know it's this star tetrahedron shaped thing around the body. Well, that is a regular Merkaba. That is a biharmonic or two-harmonic Merkaba, which means it encompasses our system and it's parallel, and it brings those frequencies together to enable the body to move in between either of them. Then there's a place called inner earth, which is a transharmonic time cycle, which means it has about double the frequency for every one of its dimensions. You can use a regular Merkaba to get through the gates and then out to somewhere else, but you cannot go in and stay into inner earth, nor can you be in there for any period of time without having activated a transharmonic Merkaba. It has 12 planes altogether. It has, instead of having 3 planes on the top and 3 on the bottom, it has 6 on top and 6 on bottom. It is the equivalent of our 12th dimensional Mahanta Merkaba. We are going to be taught how to begin the process of building this particular Akasha Merkaba in our systems. This will be very useful to us for various reasons. First of all, it will allow the spiritual integration process to happen much more quickly. If that's the only reason you're here, is because you want to do your spiritual integration stuff more quickly. Even if that was your only objective, this will help you do that more quickly. However, if you aim higher and you'd like to possibly explore the reality of what it means to go through stargates at some point between now and, say, 2017, and you would like to, say, take a tour of duty in inner earth and see what it's like, you would need an Akasha Merkaba to do this. There are certain things taking place on the planet right now that involve activating this level of Merkaba on the planet. Ideally, that wouldn't be taking place right now. In 2008, perhaps, but not right now. It's being done because there are, again, counter-strategies being used to try to create negative agendas on the planet that are affecting the planetary grids. So in order to balance that, the guardian races are assisting the planet to move into not only its regular Merkaba, but to go under the umbrella of the inner earth Merkaba, which means this planet has it, parts of this planet have to get to the point where they can sustain an Akasha Merkaba. We will help the planet do that as we learn to do it for ourselves, but we will also create for ourselves a huge protection field, as well as a huge field through which we can access higher and higher states of consciousness as we go along. There's a whole program that's going to come out of this. The Dance for Life is the first level of this program. Now, book 1 of the Mahabharata text, the whole text, we don't have time to take it down because their books are thousands of pages long, and there's 590 volumes in that set of books. It'll be, for here until the next stellar activation cycle, we'll get it done. But we're getting what's most important and most pertinent for the time period that we're in. They're giving us the most important information. The Dance for Life will be introduced here, and as soon as possible we'll have something like physically in writing for it. I'm hoping that you have something that resembles a chart pack by the end of this weekend. That depends on how fast, and if my computer doesn't crash again, tonight and tomorrow. If not, you're still going to learn this stuff. You will know what you need to do as far as when you go home. You will have a list of things and different techniques. Some of them you'll know, some of them will be new ones, and there's going to be a schedule, like a calendar. This will be very helpful. A calendar that basically suggests if you want to, develop the certain things that we're going to talk about developing, and you want to build this Merkaba, do this on a daily basis. Do this once a week, do this once a month, so we can have some idea of how to begin to. We have hundreds of techniques at this point in the teachings, and you can look at the teachings and go, yeah. Shall I take a year off from work and just start on, technique 1 or what? All of the techniques are valuable. Some of them, even the early ones, are necessary if you're just coming into the work. So these would be techniques you would still need to use when you're teaching and those kind of things, even if you've gone beyond them, where you've activated those things and now you're on to other activations. Some of the things from the beginning teachings you need to activate before any of the other stuff will work. Like there are certain things that we'll go over this weekend that you have to have already done, like Emerald and Amethyst Awakening needs to be done at least once before any of the Veka code things are going to work in the body. So if you're teaching people how to work with Veka codes, you have to run them through that long and laborious exercise just once. That will be enough. So the calendar will help you to organize, okay, what do I do? How do I integrate this into my regular daily life where I have like a job and I have a family and like once in a while I like to sleep, and eat sometimes. It will give you basically something to follow that will ensure that if you do follow it, you will have a progressive increase in your growth, as far as the frequencies in your body, which of course will bring the frequencies of consciousness into your mind and your awareness. It will also begin a process that there are some other courses that are coming up too. One of them is called the Contact course, and that's going to be introduced on the Bermuda trip, and then as soon as there's the written materials on it, it will be available, through correspondence or whatever. For people who are not just in this for just the smaller level spiritual integration stuff, who are really in it for the big mission, and who desire to begin establishing personal contact with the Iani races, that's what the Contact course is for. So these courses, Dance of Life, is a minimum requirement. Before the Iani are going to even attempt to try to help you make contact with them, to work with you, they expect you to at least care enough to do the stuff that's going to be explained to you in Dance for Life. All right, so there's these programs are beginning to have a step effect, okay? You want to get to step 5, you got to take these steps first. Now, Dance of Life is going to be, or Dance for Life, I keep calling it Dance of Life because that was the original title before they let me know it was part of a larger thing. The next level is called the Dance for Love. The next one is the Dance for Freedom. And the final one is the Dance for Joy. Now, each one of these dances, dance refers to the dances your cells are doing and the dances that your electrons are doing around your nucleus in your cells. It refers to the dance of the primal currents and forces as they move through your body and your being. And it refers to using the technology of internal Merkaba, which is Merkaba that's generated through the natural circuitry that you were born with, that you're supposed to have, not external machines that make, Merkaba fields happen. There are stages that each of these dances are going to take us through. These are the dances of activating the levels of your own identity fully into the cellular structure. The radial body activation. It's a radial body activation course. The radial body was saved for last as far as they taught us about anatomy, they taught us about our chakra systems and our Kathara grid and all the things in between. The radial body is a part of the anatomy that controls the rest of those things with the Kathara grid. They work together to control the hologram that you're walking around in. The planet has a radial body, the galaxy has one, etc., etc. We'll get into what the radial body is more. Some of the people in Canada, when we went up to Canada for the Calgary workshop teaching Kathara, this is where this information came through. It was given to us then. So it's new, except for the people in Canada from here, that are here from Canada, will have heard a little bit of the radial body things before. The introduction to the radial body material in general that was given in Canada is in, I don't know if we have them here tonight, but they're here somewhere. The Calgary supplement that was made for the Templar manual does have the beginning teachings of those. Okay, some of those I might include in the paperwork that's going to be for Dance of Life, but probably most of what's in there won't be in Dance of Life, so you might be interested in looking into that if you want a preview on paper of what I mean by radial body. Now, the radial body has different levels to it. There are 5 levels of radial body. The radial body is a capsule made of certain things that create an etheric tissue that surrounds each of your Huva bodies. Now, we've talked about Huva bodies before, the 3-dimensional egg-shaped bodies that we actually live within. These are formed by the Merkaba fields that are spiraling around them that create these form constant spaces, these egg-shaped spaces that we exist with inside. Our matter exists within them. When we talk about the radial bodies, we're talking about this film or skin of frequency, of energy, that is literally the holographic refraction lens that allows the hologram to move through us, bounce into energy, and bounce back to give us a 3-dimensional holographic experience. It is also the living memory matrix. This is where our cellular memory, it's what our cells are connected to give it cellular memory. The radial body levels are the barriers, the tissue capsule barriers that need to dissolve in order for you to expand into your density 2 body. You would have to dissolve the radial body level that is around your density 1 body. Now, natural activation of Merkaba would allow that to happen if our Merkabas were acting naturally. But because the planetary Merkaba isn't acting naturally since 25,500 BC, there are problems that our Merkabas have when we just try to use standard Merkaba technologies. When we go into radial body technologies, the radial body tells the Merkaba what to do. All right, we're going right into the core of the programming between the Gathara grid and the radio body. This is where the instructions get set. And if there's any distortions there, they're going to come out everywhere else. So as we work with radio body technologies, we're first of all going to clear whatever is in the way in the DNA template, in the Gathara grid, in the Merkaba. But we're also going to not just clear, we're not just clearing radio body, we're activating radio body. Every one of our atoms is also surrounded by a radio body. The nucleus within the atoms is surrounded by a radio body. When we work with radio body technologies, we begin to remember how to speak to our atoms and how to hear them speak back in return, which means we progressively get more direct conscious control over. And it's co-creative control, because your body and the part of God that lives within it has its own connection to Source. And it's a co-creation. You can't just force your will on it like we're taught to do here. When we work with radio body and we work with the Vecca codes to move the radio body and to speak its language, we are beginning to get the power over our own elemental selves again. The elements that form our bodies, the elements that form the earth bodies. When we begin to activate our radio bodies, we bring back the ancient arts where we used to be able to speak to the elemental kingdoms, where people knew fairies were real, and they could feel and see the water spirits, and they could communicate with the leaves and the trees and find out every one of them had a different identity, and a tree branch was like a big family. All right? Some of the wonderful things that will come to us when we begin with activating our radio body means we're getting these currents not just of energy, but of pure consciousness, the Mano, the Ire, the Mane. We are going to begin to bring those back into the cellular structure of our body. These are the teachings that for many thousands of years now, the Illuminati races have done their absolute best to make sure nobody could get a hold of them. And the teachings that they have, because they were all fighting with each other, nobody has a complete set of any of them, so nobody knows how to access any of the currents directly. These are the natural currents, the part where you and God are together and always have been. You can embody that. And it's embodied through these currents of consciousness, these primal forces that are the forces of God will, the will of God, the will of Source that runs through you and that is in you and as a part of you. So I'm excited about it. I've been feeling, as I was working with bringing through this information and my little scribbled notes that are all over the place right now, I could feel that just as the information was coming through, it activated. There was things that were activating because I started to feel just a depth come into my own perceptions, a depth that I had cellular memory about from having in other time periods, but for the life of me, couldn't feel that depth here, and I felt very imprisoned in my physical body because of it. There was a level of feeling at one-ment with the universe and with the planet and with the ants and the trees and the clouds that I remember having, but I have not been able to fully embody here. I've done it to some degree. Well, I've begun to feel, as these frequencies were coming through over the last few weeks, piece by piece by piece, and I'd take down the written words, I would begin to feel the openings happening. I've been more and more and more been feeling a really interesting sensation of being very, very consciously aware of the space between my atoms and the spaces between my cells. Sometimes I could feel the air moving through them. That's a new one. I felt that once on the beach during an ordination, I think it was, where I actually felt like the wind was blowing through my cells, and it was the strangest feeling. So just the information itself, as we learn this information, it is beginning the process of awakening the Mano within ourselves, the Mane within ourselves, the Ire within ourselves. Collectively, those three currents are called the Ek, the Ka, and the Sha, the Akasha. So that's where the word Akasha comes from. We're going to progressively move through exercises. There's 5 new ones that are coming through between sometime tonight after we leave here and the end, before the end of Sunday, that are going to be given, and we're going to be shown how to incorporate them with the techniques we already know. And most importantly, we're going to be given at least the rudimentary step-by-step. Here's how you would teach somebody about this stuff, right? Where you'll see some of the things that you already know about, but you'll see them in a light where they're talked about in terms of these primal forces. All right, where if we're going to talk about chakras, or if we're going to talk about the Gathara grid, or if we're going to talk about part of Kai, part of K, and part of Kam, it will be in the context of these primal forces and what those relationships are. So you'll be able to see the stuff you already learned, where it fits with this, but you will also be able to see how to teach somebody the whole caboodle, where you don't have to go back to the other books you had to teach them that stuff to get them up to where you can teach them this, where you can teach them it together. So I will do my best, and Az will do his best too, because, by the way, even though he's very quiet about it, like to say, he is officially in open communication and receiving transmissions from the plates. So it's like he's worked very hard, to get there. He's had to go through some very fast activations in the last year or so, and he's activated as a speaker, as they say. Yep. Yeah, there was some other information that was given to us recently as far as speakers go. And it's interesting. Speakers are like, if you've been with us for a while, you have some idea of what that means, but yeah, we didn't even know what that contract really fully meant. We've been learning as we go along. Probably on Sunday, I think, I will begin to share some of the information that was provided really just for this group they call speakers. And there's another group that's called the Inner Council, the Inner Earth, the IANI Inner Council. There's a group of 12 people that have the responsibility stuff happening here, where the speakers are part of them. You have speakers, you have flame holders, you have flame keepers, you have all sorts of different things. These are contracts that people were birthed in with. We'll talk a little bit about those on Sunday. We all have some level of agreement to be here. You wouldn't be a part of this work. And the people who come to you that are interested in you teaching them something about this work, you will not have somebody appear that does not have some type of contract in relation to this work. You may have lots of the ones that have fallen angelic contracts coming over, because they have contracts to try to get as much information of you as possible, or hopefully to take you with them, right? But you may also have wonderful people here that are, here to learn. You're going to help those people wake up. It will help to understand the structure, especially if we're going to go into things like the contact course. It will help you to understand the structure of interrelationship and distribution of responsibility that takes place in Inner Earth, in the Inner Earth councils. There are people who have, let's say, bigger jobs, and some that have littler jobs, but there's not a hierarchy as far as, well, I'm president, so I'm better than you, and that kind of stuff. They don't do that stuff. If somebody has an important position of authority in Inner Earth, first of all the other ones respect them tremendously. Why? Because there will be a level of responsibility and potential, if necessary, personal sacrifice of what you'd like to do as opposed to what's good for the whole and what's good for the group, that goes with every step of authority in position that's given. So at the end of this, there have been several things solidified as far as contracts go. And we were given the official announcement as far as who's who and who's doing what job, as far as the inner guys that are working directly with the Inner Earth IANI now. And there's been a lot of confusion and a whole lot of, let's say, false claims from beyond the edge that have been coming through ever since we introduced, like the fact that there's speakers and, people are talking to the IANI, a whole host of channels that swear they're talking to Ma'a, and they're not, So there's a clarification that's going to be done that has to do with the blue flame, the gold flame, and the violet flame, and 3 speakers contracts and what's going down with them. What we'll probably do is simply read to you the information as it was given to us, as the transmission came through. It was how we were notified about what the status is of these jobs and this kind of things. This will take us into something, too, that will be better off talked about Sunday, that we introduced with the Regent's Consulate today. It will be a thing that we go off the tape as far as the training tapes for Dance of Life for at the end on Sunday. That has to do with the circumstances that are taking place right now and why it's a very timely period to begin the Dance for Life programs. Now, the Dance for Life programs are going to be the first set of technologies that you've been using, many of you have been using the technologies as we've been, given them. These have prepared you to use the next higher level ones. People that come into Dance for Life there will be some of the old technique that they will have to be able to do before they can plug into this. But they don't have to go through like 2 years of learning all about it like you might have if you've been following the program. But the Dance for Life program is going to do, there are 3 parts of it. I don't have any Mylars tonight at all because the computer decided to crash about 5 minutes before we're ready to leave. That's why we're late tonight. We were trying to pull these few pages that have like my outlines and things, so I could at least have something here for me to look at, so I don't lose track of myself. And the computers, they all shut down. We have 3 of them, in the house in different rooms, and something happened with the line because it power surged or something, and they all went. So then we had to go through the process of, they came back, fortunately, so I got this. But anyway, I just want, the reason I don't have anything to put up here is because this information has been given to me in the last probably a day and a half on scribbled little yellow pads, and there's just been no time because we had to do a regents meeting this morning, early or at noon. It started today. So you will have some paperwork by tomorrow. There will be some things that I'm producing. We may have to do a Kinko's run at some bizarre hour, tomorrow morning, and it'll come in by the afternoon. But there's a basic structure of things that's happening. With the Dance of Life, the way it's been described is mastering the Nada Huva body. Now, we talked about the Huva bodies in other courses, like in Tangible Structure of the Soul. The Nada Huva body is the dimension 1, 2, and 3 levels of yourself. It includes your physical and subatomic body and your etheric body around it. It includes your D2 emotional elemental body. That's where your emotions come from, what you call your emotions. And also, it's called emotional elemental because this is the part of you that composes the consciousness that makes up like the water molecules in your body and all the little elements in your body. And the D3 mental body, which is the part of you that gives you what you would call your egotistical focus. And the ego isn't bad unless it's applied in a negative way. That's the part of you that looks out from the third dimensional frequencies to see the second dimensional frequencies as solid in your hologram. So one of the biggest and most difficult parts, I've met a lot of people who have done a lot of higher activations and those kind of things, but they have not been taught how to activate their bodies, so they can't anchor any of those higher activations. This is where you find people that get really buzzy. Do you ever meet buzzy people? Where they meditate lots, a lot of time they're vegetarian because they've been taught that, it's terrible to eat animals and those kind of things. And they tend to be very, very thin because they don't eat enough and because they have so much frequency running through them. It's amazing that their feet are still on the ground. There's a problem happening. There's trickery being done in some of the teaching circles, and the people teaching it usually don't realize. They think it's the right thing, to teach. They're teaching higher activation, higher body activation, with 4th chakra activation. That's the astral body, okay? They're teaching open the heart. Everything's focused on the heart center. They're leaving the rest of your body here to rot, and they're teaching you to activate your astral body because they want to take it someplace, but it makes you very, very buzzy. You kind of go, you can almost hear the sound of your molecules ringing off each other in your ears, right? It's a great space to be in if you can balance it. But if you get there and the rest of you is going, and your body's like down there someplace, most people that go through this phase, and some people will pass through this phase just as they're learning to balance frequencies, and it's not a negative thing. But it goes into a negative thing when this barrier starts to happen between chakra 4 and chakra 3. The frequencies are coming to here, then they're going this way. They're not going down into the lower chakras. They're not clearing what's called the shadow body, which is something we're going to learn about. Sunday we're going to do tangible structure of the shadow to find out where that lives so we can root it out and heal it and bring it back into ourselves in a way that it's going to work with us instead of against us. So there's a lot of buzzy things happening right now as far as people being taught how to do activations that are activating their higher chakras from 4 and up. And they're also activating the base chakra, so they can skip over chakras 2 and 3, which means skipping over DNA strands 2 and 3. That means the mental body on strand 3 and the emotional body on strand 2 are being left just as they are, and these little circuits of energy are running down. This makes a connection between the Kundalini energies that are focused at the base of the spine and that run through the base chakra, so you can get an anchor into somebody's body. And it gives an astral field. They can access through astral field to the 4th chakra and then anchor it down into the base chakra, literally bypassing the 2 chakras in between. This is what happened. This is what you're going through if you get the buzzy stuff, okay? The 2 chakras, chakras 3 and chakra 2, are not integrating the frequencies that are coming in from higher. There's a bypass going on. Most people will experience this at some time when they wake up because there's something in the planetary grids that is creating this effect. There's implantation, as we've talked about in some of the other courses, in the planetary grids that create an exaggeration and a mutation on something called the fight or flight instinct. All right. The fight or flight instinct, as it's known on the planet right now, is not a natural instinct. It is a result of frequencies polarizing in ways they're not supposed to when they hit the beginning of chakra 2 and the end of chakra 3. There's reasons why certain teachings were being given here. They were teaching you to bypass those 2 chakras, and they would have teachings that went with them like, oh, don't worry the mind. The mind is a lower thing. You need to focus on the spirit. Like, forget about your mental body. Leave that alone. Leave it right there. Because the mental body and the emotional body have been the areas in our bodies that are anchoring the shadow, that are holding it in there. And if you really ran the frequencies through the way they're supposed to be run on a D12 subfrequency, which is a 12-code pulse, it would clear those problems. So the buzziness comes from when we're either having somebody help us activate in ways that we're better off without, or when we're activating naturally and running into that part of ourselves that is anchoring the shadow. The shadow is not just a psychological phenomena. There's been a lot out on shadow therapy and those kind of things in the last 10 years, and it's starting with, I think, psychiatry before it went into, New Age, things like that. The shadow is not just a manifestation of certain unassimilated portions of our own consciousness that are kind of stuck in our subconscious mind and try to steal our power sometimes, and you have power struggles inside with the shadow, and it can do all sorts of weird things. If you have no really developed shadow, it can make you into something like a schizophrenic person. People who are suffering from these diseases, these are shadow diseases. These are where other parts of the being are trying to take the energy away from the personality and try to take over the body. It's like you're trying to self-possess yourself. A part of yourself that you left behind a while back that has different ideas than you do decided it wants the body and it's going to get rid of you. So you have power struggles going on inside of yourself. Everybody has power struggles inside of themselves to some degree because of the implantations that we're suffering from on this planet right now. Because of especially one called the Eye of the Jackal. The Eye of the Jackal is connected to things called the Eyes of Horus. All right. The Eye of Elohim, the Eye of Yahweh, the Eye of Metatron. These are names of implants that don't just affect this planet. They affect the halls of Mente stargates. Probably on Sunday we'll talk a little bit more about the larger picture of where those elements of shadow fit in. What we will be working through with on Saturday and Sunday, we will be working with technologies, those radial body technologies. That is where the power is, to be able to clear and integrate this shadow. You can't cut your shadow off, because if you do, you just divorced half of your energy. If the process of ascension occurs by integrating your energy and you cut half of it off, you're not going anywhere. You're going to stay here. You're not going to get through a Stargate. You might get your body through. Your body will not be able to handle the frequency. You'll turn up as consciousness that fragments back into the field down here. So shadow healing is essential to the process of ascension, to the process of freedom. Shadow is interesting. Shadow is kind of scary when you look at it in the terms that it has been for the last 10 years, where it's this part of the psyche that kind of like, no matter how good you try to be, it comes up and tries to bite you, Like there's a part of myself. I have my good little angel self on one shoulder and my bad little devil self on the other shoulder. We've been living this duality, this level of duality in our psyches. That's like the part that says, I'm going to eat healthy this week. I'm going to do really, really, really well. And the other part says, chocolate cake. Now. And you're like, the impulses are caught like this. One leg wants to run that way, one wants to run this way. This goes everywhere. It goes into relationships. Oh, this person's a really nice person. This could be a really good relationship. Shadow goes, oh, look at that. Over there. Oh, that looks better, doesn't it? So you're constantly in a state of pull and push within yourself. We're living a duality complex because of these unnatural implantations in the planetary grids that come up and direct our DNA in ways it wasn't supposed to be directed. Animals are living this too. They're fight or flight instincts. That used to be once upon a time lions and lambs did lay down with each other, and that was a good thing. They were friends, where you could have parakeets and hamsters and cats playing in the yard together. They didn't try to eat each other. There's been an over-exaggeration of polarity on this planet because of these problems, and we are living manifestations of what that means. So many times we end up stuck in our own psyches saying, I don't know which way to go, because you have all these different impulses inside. Let's say your emotions want to do one thing, but your rational mind wants to do the other. right? What do? Heart or head, heart or head, heart or head. Why do the heart and the head so often want to do different things? If it feels good, do it, one of them says. The other says, yeah, but it's obviously not the right thing to do. But if it feels good, do it anyway. Feeling. This is one of the things we've been taught in the New Age movement. If it feels good, do it. If it doesn't feel good, that means it's not good for you. So trust your feelings. You got to trust your feelings, which is a core truth that is actually good for you. If your emotional body and elemental body isn't twisted up into extra duality. Right now, you could encounter something that was absolutely awful for you, that would, crash your DNA and get you absolutely in the opposite place you want to go, and you might feel an absolute resonance. Oh, this feels good. Why? Because your implant likes it. Okay? Because the eye of the jackal says, yes, that's family. All right? Yeah. It's important as we grow to learn to trust our feelings. However, before we can do that in a way that's good for us and our feeling body, we need to be able to clear our feeling body. We need to be able to understand where this conflict comes from in the self, why the head wants to go in one direction, the heart wants to go in another, and very often the spirit wants to go in a completely different one. We're chopped up in little pieces inside our own psyche. This can be scary when you think of psyche, mind. Oh yeah, that intangible but obviously very real part of ourselves that's somewhere. If you can't find it and you can't see it, how are you going to fix it? It's very scary the way psychology teaches us about these things and how they approach it. There's something called the subconscious mind. Where is it? Who knows? But it's there, obviously. We see it by its effect. Okay? The shadow is in the subconscious mind. Where? We don't know where that is, but we know it's there. Right? Okay, how are we going to fix the shadow? If A, we don't know where it lives, like nobody has its address, we just know it's there, and it comes out of its house and does things and then runs back and hides again. It can make us very frightened of ourselves. There are so many people out there that are going through activations right now, DNA activations. They do not know about DNA activations. Nobody, they're in circles that don't talk about that. That's not real to them. But meanwhile, their hormones are going wacky. Some of them are on hormone therapy because they're getting heat rushes. They'll be 20 years old and they think they're going through menopause because they're getting all sorts of heat rushes. People are getting manic depression. People are getting symptoms of bipolar, progressive, more and more advanced bipolar disorders. All of this is because their DNA is activating. And they go into the psychiatry area for help. And the psychiatrists are having the same type of issues. And what a psychiatrist will do if they're having those problems is bring out the big pharmaceutical book and find out, okay, what fixes that one? Because they don't know any better either. Right now, we have an opportunity to learn the address of the shadow, where it lives. It is not just a psychological phenomenon, just as we've learned in the last couple of years, that there is a tangible structure to the soul, a specific order, and these things exist in certain places, in space, in time, and in your body. Well, there's tangible structure of the shadow, and we're going to get into that on Sunday probably, unless maybe at the end of Saturday. The shadow is connected directly to your atoms. It's connected, especially in certain parts of your atoms. There are things in atoms, in the nucleus of atoms, that are called neutrons. Neutrons are a key particle, or subatomic particle. They're a key particle in the body's ability to run the higher frequencies and the higher forces to be able to undergo cellular transmutation. There's one particular mutation that's demonstrated in science. Now, I think there's only one, from what I've heard, there's only one type of molecule that does not have neutrons in the atoms, in the nucleus, and that is the hydrogen atom. Now, interestingly enough, and by no coincidence, I'm sure, guess what elements hold together in the DNA chains, hold the DNA chains together? The hydrogen bond at the center of each of the ladders. It's through the natural hydrogen bonds that what's called turnstile DNA, which is a natural set of transient DNA that pops on into activation, that allows more chemicals to be produced in the body, that allows for physical transmutation through stargates to occur. There's been a mutation done on this planet in the elemental kingdom that we're carrying that literally has taken the neutrons out of the hydrogen atoms in our DNA bonds. When we begin to work with radio body, healing, clearing, and activating, we're going to be putting back what's missing. Now, the shadow lives in the spaces where things that were supposed to be aren't. It also lives in certain parts of the elements within our body. Our water molecules hold part of the shadow. There are certain metals in the body, elemental metals in the body, that are holding the shadow. The shadow is a part of our coding, our own DNA templates that are in reversal. They're running the opposite mathematical program to what our natural divine blueprint is. The shadow progressively draws energy. We draw energy in from the planet, from the universe, and the shadow draws energy from us. And progressively, the body deteriorates much more rapidly here than it was ever supposed to, because the shadow is taking the energy, and it's actually a part of your consciousness that's getting twisted, that's getting messed up and confused and going into base patterns of fear and lack and all of those things. And it creates a set of impulses within the self that can very often control or take charge of the emotional body, and if it gets really strong, can take control of the mental body and the action body sometimes, where you become afraid of yourself. Did you ever have like those days where just something came over you and you felt really lousy, and then you just lost your temper? Some people have temper problems, They have a short fuse, as it said. They blow quick, right? This is a person who has the shadow that's trying to get control of them at that time, the part of the consciousness that's convoluted and twisted, and it's trying to take control of the body and override the organic stabilizing personality. Your shadow self isn't evil. Your shadow self is a part of yourself that's in distress. It's been victimized by certain conditions on this planet that were not organic. So it's a part of yourself that you need to realize is there. And nobody's going to run away and say, I don't have a shadow, I'm impeccable. I've met a few that are doing this, and they, yeah, right, you should see what your astral body's doing right now. They'll be standing there going, looking at me like, how dare you see me? I know you see me, this kind of stuff. We could go through let's say the cosmic body wash and become pure and impeccable right now. Flash off into the other worlds, get totally purified. Flash back on here, we got a shadow again, because the planetary grids have the twist, this filter that polarizes energy where it's not supposed to be polarized. This eye of the jackal is a planetary implant. And what that does is manifest. As soon as our consciousness and our energy comes back down into form here, it will put that back in. What can override that and set it back to its natural pattern is working directly with the radio body that we're going to learn how to do, beginning tomorrow with the Dance for Life program. So we're going to meet our shadows, and we're going to learn to love them and bring them home. As we do this, we're setting ourselves free from a level of manipulation that most people don't realize is there. The eye of the jackal, the eye of Metatron, the eye of Elohim, the eyes of Horus, and several other eyes that are running around out there. These are refraction polarization lenses. They're an external technology that have been put in the planetary shields of certain planets, and Earth is one of them. They literally polarize the energy in the planetary body, so anything on it is going to get polarized. We can override those implants, that effect in our bodies, by using radio body healing. All right. Now we're even going to have to approach it as healing, like Kathara healing. That's directly, let's heal here. Healing is going to be a byproduct of radio body activation. So what we're going through here, we'll begin the process of getting a handle on ourselves. If we're going to be masters of anything, if we're going to be spiritual masters, you have to be body masters as well. There's people that run around out there, and you can tell their bodies are just like falling apart around them and holding like really, really low and negative energy while they're claiming to be, I'm Avatar so-and-so. I mean, my body's not perfect. I tell that to people, say, oh, here it goes. Yep, collecting the miasms again. Oh, geez, I have to go after that shadow thing again. Now, people that think they're above and beyond the shadow are in trouble because they're denying that part of themselves. So they're not going to be able to fix it. They're not going to be able to heal it. As we begin to acknowledge that we have this part, and we don't have to pick it apart with a psychological comb. I mean, if you go to psychology to help with the shadow, you can spend from now until your next 5 lifetimes on the couch and not get to the bottom of it. How many bad episodes from this life and others do you have to go through before you find the core of that problem so you can release that issue, whatever it was? And then what's the issue after that one? The shadow collects the issues. It's the collector of all those parts of yourself that felt lousy, that reacted poorly, that was picked on, that played victim-victimizer games. Your shadow collects these parts of self. And it's these parts of self do direct you from a subconscious level. You cannot get to be a spiritual master if you do not master and heal the body. Now, unfortunately for this planet, people have not had access to the frequencies to do that easily, or to the technologies to know how to do it, to remember how to do it. This is why the gifts that we're being given right now by the guardian races are so precious. They're teaching us, if we're willing to learn, how to get a hold of mastering our bodies. The hardest one is the Nadahuva body. It's the lowest body, the dimension 1, 2, and 3 body. But this is where so many of the thousands and thousands of years of mutations have built up to form a shadow part of ourselves, where a part of our water molecules are working against us. We're a part of literally the amino acids and proteins that our cells are structured on. Part of them are working against us. Fortunately, part are working for us as well. They're the parts that still have integrity, where they can still run the higher frequencies in the right way. We can learn to amplify the parts of ourselves that are not in shadow in order to progressively heal the shadow. Because these people feel horribly, horribly victimized by the evil ones over in the United States, who have taken their culture and their way of life that's built around service to the God they believe is the only one away from them. They see us as a direct threat to their spiritual integrity and identity. There are political games that have gone down for ages here that pit one group against the other. And what's interesting is the ones who act worst as victimizers usually are doing it because they feel like they're victims. There's a whole game being run here, and it's a game that runs between interpersonal relationships too. We've seen it happening in some of the groups where the Azurite temple groups are kind of like polarizing, like this one little faction over here and there's another over here, we don't like you anymore, we don't like you either. This kind of stuff, this nonsense is going on. This is because we are having activations in the planetary grids now that are calling up more of the programming, amplifying the programming of the Eye of the Jackal. The Eye of the Jackal is a lens. It is a lens that bends and refracts energy in a way that is not natural. The Eye of the Jackal is placed in Earth's shields at the level of D1.75, so almost up to D2. In your body, that would be just a little bit below your second chakra, where your second chakra starts. The Eye of the Jackal lens is also a receiving station. It receives broadcasts of psychotronic programs that have been going on here for centuries, that are literally standing waveforms that just like we can transmit information on sound waves here, and we can transmit it on light waves here. Well, they are programs that have been controlling and directing the emotional bodies of humans, the fight-or-flight instinct in humans. This is why we run around in circles in trying to get free and realize, okay, we're creators. We don't have to experience lack anymore. When we try to teach our minds how to do this, our minds can be fine with it, but our bodies go, oh my God, the rent's coming up in 2 days. What am I going to do? Oh my God, I can't make enough money to pay my rent. I'm not going to have a place to live. This whole set of patterns that runs our economic structure, that runs our spiritual structures, our traditional spiritual structures. If I don't, I'll go to hell. These are all fear-based patterns. These are stuck in the shadow, and the shadow is running the patterns because somebody else is running the shadow. The shadow is not just a part of you that fell by the wayside or made some bad decisions and became what it did. It was a part of you that was hijacked, and that is being hijacked psychotronically through this particular lens apparatus that's in the planetary grids. So it's not something you have to feel ashamed or embarrassed about, that you have a shadow. It's not something you want to hide in the closet like a skeleton. You don't need to. It's a part that needs to be healed. When we work with the technologies that we're going to get into over this workshop, we are going to progressively heal that shadow, and we're going to reclaim the memory that shadow holds as well. Right now we walk around in pretty much amnesia. Even the most awake of us, it is hard to remember who you were before you came here. It is not easy to find your incarnational memory. Where the heck is it? I'm supposed to have cellular memory. Hello down there. Anybody in there have this one? It's very difficult to bring this information up. You might get it in the dream state at first. You might get little snapshots. Some people have more of it open than others. But there's whole blocks of our race memory and our personal memory that are locked within the shadow. So as we begin to heal and integrate the shadow, one of the things that will be a byproduct of that process is beginning to remember more of who we are, who we were, except were implies you're not anymore. And time is simultaneous. So if you find out you were Cleopatra, you still are. That doesn't mean you have to be her here. That was one of the costumes you wore, right? One of the interesting things that's going to happen with people as DNA activations continue is that they're going to start getting more of that memory coming back up. But if they don't know how to balance it, you may find Cleopatras running around. You may find people identifying so much with one of the past lifetimes or one of the future ones. There's certain groups that do that, where they like literally wear E.T. costumes and act like E.T.s because they know in the future they are, right? There's a balance an identity needs to find when you're integrating yourself as an avatar or even as a soul. Yes, you have multiple cells that live in different bodies in different time frames. You have one right here, right now. This is the one you're focused in. The rest is you too, but you don't need to make this one important by adopting the identity of one of the other ones. It doesn't matter. You may have information there that's great, like if you happen to be King Tut, great, because that means you probably know where certain things are hidden and certain ancient records are hidden, because there were things hidden in those days. So there's advantages to allowing that memory to come through. But you need to realize when you go through these processes that you, who you are right now, even if you've been taught since the time you were this big that you're worthless, you're not worth anything, you'll never be good enough, you look at your job and you say, boy, this really stinks. I thought by the time I was 30 I might be doing something I like to do, where you can really feel down on yourself in this time frame because of the cultural programmings and the struggle just to express yourself and be yourself here. You need to give yourself permission to, no matter who you were, it doesn't matter if you found out where you were like some high priestess from another lifetime. Most of us that were indigos were. So it's like, oh yeah, hi, It's like, don't be impressed if somebody was a high priestess in another lifetime, because you probably were too, so you don't worry about it. But it's important to have enough sense of your identity here and realize that you right here have a contribution to this whole self you call your avatar. You have a contribution to make right here and now. So don't let one of the other identities, because it might be more romantic, or it might have been in a prettier time period, or you might have had more freedom, or you might have been rich and you're poor in this lifetime. Don't let that identity overshadow who you are now. When we begin to work with shadow, you will start to find yourselves. You'll start to find pieces of yourselves. Some of the pieces you won't be particularly happy with. If we could have like a self-conference, right, where we invited all the other ones from their other time frames to come to a workshop where we could all meet ourselves, you would be amazed at the family feuds that would go on. It is amazing when you start. Not all of yourselves are going to agree with you, and you're not going to agree with all of them. There are parts of you that are working out different issues to get you to where you are now, where you already know you don't want to look at it that way. But in that time frame, you did look at it that way. How do you know not to this time? Because you learned it doesn't work from that one. But if you met that self right now, you could have one heck of an argument. And it would, it's not going to say, well, excuse me, I know you're me. I don't care if you're me. I'm going to do what I want to anyway. These things are going to begin to come. They're going to come to the planet because of the frequency activations that are taking place here that will activate the DNA. But they're going to come most rapidly to indigos, because indigos have more sensitive DNA templates. When you begin to work with radio body and healing and activating radio body, it will expedite that process. It will also expedite the process of starting to, if you're not having them already, starting to initiate out-of-body experiences and those kind of things, where you find them happening spontaneously when you go to sleep and those kind of things, sometimes when you're awake. Usually your soul is controlling that, so you don't have to worry about it happening when you're driving a car, and you come back and say, oh dear, what did I do? These are things that will, all of these things will be accelerated as we go through this program, and this is the first level of the program. This is the Nada Huva body integration or activation, the radio body activation that goes with the Nada Huva body. So through this, we will learn how to, and it's not going to, you're just going to learn a workshop and you get fixed and bang, there, you're fixed in that workshop on to the next level. There's a program of learning to use frequencies and technologies that if you're really serious about really wanting to achieve and take these steps, that you will use them. There's not going to be anybody sitting on your shoulder saying, you skipped out on Tuesday. I know you did. You can't cheat in this program, because the only person who cheats is yourself. You direct it. If you don't get results, whose fault is that? Take a guess. Yes, we have to take responsibility for the fact that two things. One, if we're not doing the technologies as they were suggested, or as often as they were suggested, we will get out of it what we put into it. There's another factor that needs to be considered. And here's a responsibility factor that everybody at some point is going to have their time of reckoning with, be it here or once they cross over. Because you might as well like have your life review here instead of waiting until your body dies and getting over there and have to do it anyway. We are... Oh, wait a minute, I just got it. Bless you. Somebody just said something. Wait a minute, excuse me. Yeah, we got a live one here. Then what? Okay. All right, they're telling me Ma'a is here. Ma'a has been here all day. Ma'a is one of the, the senior members of the IANI Inner Council. I just got interrupted and basically said, I'm going on tangents, let's not do that now. Give him a rundown on Radio Body, and then he would like me to turn it over to you because you haven't the exercise that you want to run with them. I lose track of time and I just keep going. It's like a wave that just keeps moving. So anyway. All right, I will give you a quick rundown on, we have the Dance for Life, which is Nada Huva Body Mastery, and Density 1 Radio Body Activation. This will build what's called the Akasha Merkaba Phase 1, which is called the Manu Merkaba. All right, there will be, part of this is this whole program. When you have the 4 levels of this program that are the first book of the Mahabharata, there are 144 lessons of mastery. So in Dance for Life, we'll have the 12 lessons of mastery, we'll have the 12 attitudes of mastery, and we'll have 12 actions of mastery. Now, when we get down into the next one, which will eventually be volume 2 of this Mahabharata book, the Dance for Love, this is mastering the Alpha Huva body, which is the soul body level. It's the Density 2 radio body activation, and it deals with the astral body, the archetype D5, and the angelic body, Akasha alignment, aligning those with the Akasha. And the Akasha, to look at it in an easy, quick way, you could call it the God seed, all right, the part of you that is always attached and a part of God. Now, when we get into the Dance for Love, and I think we're going to introduce that in Greece. Oh, what a nice, just hit me. That's a nice place, It's supposed to be romantic. Yeah. All right, thank you. I didn't know that. That just came together. Greece, the Dance for Love. Okay. We're going to be doing Akasha Merkaba Phase 2 activation, which is the Imanu Merkaba. There are 4 levels of this Akasha Merkaba, and that's the soul integration level. This will cover the 12 vehicles of mastery, the 12 postures of mastery, and the 12 responsibilities of mastery. The next one is the Dance for Freedom. This is mastering the Beta Huva body, or the Density 3 body. It's Density 3 radio body activation. This activates and clears and aligns with the Akasha, the catheric, the monadic, and the chariatric bodies of the Oversoul body, of the Density 3 Oversoul body. It is Akasha Merkaba Phase 3, the Emmanuel Merkaba. And this will have the 12 tools of mastery. This is probably going to get fun by the time we get here, because they're starting to show us some tools that we can create, like things to, facilitate, to help us. Everybody here, most people here, like to make stuff. We're in 3D, and we like something we can hold in our hand and let it be our friend to help us with our integration. We're going to learn how to do some of these things in here. There'll be tools given, some inside tools that you can create things on the outside that will help, use those tools. We'll have the 12 insights of mastery and the 12 applications of mastery. And I can't wait to read this. I'm telling you, because you ask me what these are right now? I don't know. But I will by the time it's time to teach the course. All right. So we're all learning together. That's what's kind of nice about this program. I mean, when I sit down to take translation from the CDD plates and, having Ma'a hanging out in my mentor space saying, no, it's this. Like if I can't pull a certain part, he'll downstep it for me. It's no different than you sitting in a workshop trying to say, okay, what did she say 2 minutes ago? What was that? Okay. I have to learn this the same way you do and integrate it into myself in order to just, bring it to you. So we're learning it together. The final one. Now, the Dance for Freedom, they haven't said when that's going to be, but I think that's France. Is that the France trip? Now, that doesn't mean that these are the only places they're going to be. If you can't afford to come to France, or you can't afford to come to Bermuda or Greece. It means that that's where they'll be first introduced, and that will be the program, that's going to be given with the people that come there. But from that program will come the correspondence course and whatever materials come from that will be made available to anybody, so they can get it as soon as possible. As soon as we can get it down, workshops have an advantage, and the trips have the advantage of that's when you get it live very often. You might not have much paperwork. You'll get more paperwork if you wait for the correspondence course, but you get the frequencies live as they're coming through and coming in, and you get them first. So this is how these are going to work. So we have Greece for the Dance of Love, we have France for the Dance for Freedom. They haven't told us yet where the last one, which is the Dance for Joy, where that's going to be introduced, or when. All right, I assume it will be after the November trip to France. I don't know how soon after. I think a lot of that depends on what's happening with the planetary grids and whether we're going to have to do another leap. Because ideally, it would be nice to have about a year between each one of these just to integrate the frequencies. But right now, because there's certain things happening on the planet that are not the most positive things in the world, we need to move through these fast. The issue of those of you who've read, the Voyagers books and are aware of the, let's say, showdown that's coming for August 12th of 2003. A showdown that if certain frequencies are in critical mass on the planet, it'll be like a great sigh of relief and things will go much easier there forward. And if not, there's going to be frequency fence being progressively blasted here that is meant to shut down the DNA, to keep you locked into 3D so you don't see what's going on, around you, because we're all activating and be seeing more. Now, these technologies, these radio body activations, will progressively build the Akasha Merkaba, which will progressively allow you to walk through that without being affected by it. So these are strong enough activations that if you get them in under the line before that frequency fence broadcast gets to a certain critical mass level on the planet, that you will not be affected by the frequency fence, nor will your bodies, because the frequency fences can also mess up the bodies physically. They, can cause people to become ill. And we're going to see more of that happening probably in the next 5 or 6 years. You're going to watch certain strange things happening with, mainstream populations and things. Working with these technologies will give you a protection field, a stronger protection field, so you can keep the levels of activations that you've worked so hard to get already, and you can continue the activations without having the frequencies running through the atmosphere shutting you down every time you try to activate. All right. Now, this is why we're doing them fast. This is why we're not waiting 1 year for this one and 1 year for that one. By August of 2003, just in case certain things don't go as well as the Guardians would hope, you will already have built enough frequency to not fall back asleep. Because falling back asleep after you've worked so hard to get where you are, where you can sit and listen to this kind of information, would be very, very sad, because you worked hard to get here. Even before you ever met, our work, you've been working really hard. And if you look back at your life, this life, even if it's the only one you remember, you have been working very hard to get to the point where you could sit in this chair right now, and there will be a point in your future where you look back from a different place, where you actually made it through a gate. Wow, so this is inner Earth. Oh, I remember this. I used to live here. All of a sudden, it's not as big a deal as you thought it was when you were on this side. It's like, is it real? Could it really be there? Could I really possibly go to this wonderful, magical place, right? And you get over it and say, oh, yeah. Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, and so-and-so lives over there. You'll remember it. But there's a part of you that's looking back right now, knowing that you worked really hard just to get to where you could be right now, and you worked really hard, and you will work hard from here to get to there. But it's also you can get back to there, where you're not trapped in here anymore, where you're not trapped in this little tiny hologram, this controlled prison camp hologram, and where you actually help to set it free. The last one, the Dance for Joy, is mastering the Maharahuva body. That's the density 4 avatar body. It's a density 4 radio body activation, and this would be the final phase of building the Akasha Merkaba. The phase 4 of the Akasha Merkaba is called the Imanyanas Merkaba, and that is the same thing as the Akasha Merkaba. The Akasha are the sound tone, or the vibrations of the names of the currents that create that Merkaba. This Merkaba, once you have the ability to activate it. Now, right now, if we all got our codes activated and could activate them right now, we'd totally blow up the planet if we tried to activate them right now. But what we're doing in the bodies is building the parts that can be activated. So when the time comes, when it's time to use them, when the planet has raised its frequencies enough where it can sustain people walking around in these fields without it crashing the grids, we will already have them made. It's like having them on idle. We'll also be able to use them if case there's a crisis. These are the Merkaba fields that would allow you to be taken into either the inner Earth or into one of the transharmonic trion meage zones that we talked about. I forget which workshop we talked a little bit about those in. But these have to do with a particular time matrix that interfaces with ours. I think it's once every 440 years for 110 years, and it opened in 2002. It's starting to interface here. This is where the masters, right, the Palladians, the Palladians live from the Palladia Urtite cloister races. That's where their whole reality shifted into those spaces. These are places that, if things get rough here, they're buffer places, places where people can be safe. These are the Merkaba fields you need to get in there. You won't get in to either those places where you can stay in them if you just have the regular star tetrahedron Merkaba. So we're being given these now so we can, when the time comes, have the ability to fully activate the Merkaba. The Dance for Joy will have the 12 celebrations of mastery, the 12 gratitudes of mastery, and the 12 victories of mastery. And I imagine we're going to learn a whole lot of wonderful things together by the time we get that far. I don't know when they're going to give Dance for Joy yet. Maybe they'll let me know before this workshop is over. What I will do is you'll get a copy of this. You would have probably had more if the computer hadn't crashed when we were trying to get it copied. You'll at least have this. There's going to be more. I'm going to be up tonight doing paperwork because there's at least some charts I want to get done so you can see certain things, because it's much easier to get it if you can look at where things are in a diagram. So I'm going to do what Ma asked me to do 10 minutes ago, which is shut up. And I'm going to pass the microphone to speaker number 2. And just because he's speaker number 2 and I'm number 1, that's not a pecking order. All right, it's just who had the first job and who has the second one. They're the same. They're all the same level. And we're going to introduce speaker number 3 by the end of the weekend as well, because that contract has been, finalized. And I'm very glad at who it is. It's somebody who is very, very qualified for this and has served the role before. So anyway, I will turn the mic over to. Oh no, I won't. He left. Okay. Okay. What speaker 2 is going to do is he's going to run you through. You've heard enough of being talked at. Now we're going to do an exercise, and I will let you introduce it and take it from there. Okay. Do you mind if I go find that?
Pardon? Not. Sometimes some things come in so early that we have them for like a year or more before we're moved to share them with people. And what we're going to do together tonight is something that Ashana and I have shared once. I think it was about 18 months ago, and it's referred to as the Maharic Template Guided Meditation. And it's a particular experience which will ultimately lead to you meeting your Christos and receiving a gift from your Christos, which you will bring back to the physical body here and now. In some of my past experiences, it would be fair to say that I've had difficulty visualizing or experiencing or being led or guided by someone to a place where ultimately I would meet something called a Christos, much less receive the most massive, beautiful amethyst snow-covered crystal you'd ever seen in your life and bring it back and put it in your tailbone. But I was that man. This technique is absolutely extraordinary. And it's one that, because it's being recorded, is becoming part of the Dance for Life program. And I highly recommend it. I know Ashana, she's in the room, would do. 2, for you to put it on your list of favorites that you use from time to time. Because I take you through it, you will realize, you will learn some things about the dimensional levels and why you can go there and what you can do there. And you may be drawn to some of these levels from time to time in order that you want to receive further information, things that may help you to work with a new gift you're going to receive this evening. Or when you want to solve a problem, all right? And you'll gather as we move through it step by step what kind of applications are available, because I'll mention them as we go, all right? So if you can start to just moderate your breathing, so 2 or 3 deep breaths. I will put plenty of space into this so that when I'm telling you to feel something or imagine something, I'll give you time to do it, but I won't talk over it until it's time to move on to the next step. So while you're regulating your breathing, I'll just explain in outline what we're going to do. We're going to take an initial journey down to the first cell, first of the 8 cells, which you keep in your tailbone. That's where it's always found. This is the location of the Christos ray. It's the point of entry of the hydroplasmic beam, which anchors first there before spreading to the other 7 cells, and, as it were, the creation of your own Cathara grid at the point of fetal integration. This process brings healing and enlightenment, as well as, with a little practice, experience of oneness of a kind that is rare to find. It's also a place you go to receive specific guidance and information from Source, from your Christos. So, just concentrate on your breathing a little bit. Just try to feel or sense the difference in how your body begins to change. You should be feeling a little softer, a little more stretched out, more of a stretched, graceful, gentle, flowing waveform, which is you. And I want you to begin to imagine yourself as a ball of light. You as consciousness, as pure consciousness. The center of your skull, the pineal gland. And begin to move this ball of light, which is you, consciousness, down to the first cell at the very tip of your tailbone. Don't be in a hurry to do it. Just move it gently down the central vertical current, all the way down to your tailbone. On each exhale, just a little push. Gently draw more breath. Exhale, a little push again. To do this properly will take several breaths. As you arrive there, I want you to try and feel yourself as a spark of light within a teardrop shape of light. The teardrop represents the Akasha. So try and feel yourself as a spark of light within this teardrop shape of light, in your tailbone. And inside of this teardrop, see yourself as a tiny teardrop of energy. So you have a teardrop nested inside of a teardrop. You may notice that the energy in this space is particularly buzzy. Now try and feel or sense, but in some way choose the one spot here where there is no sense of movement whatsoever. This is how the first cell really feels. Take your time and move slowly to this spot where you sense no movement at all. This is the Christos grounding space. Pale silver space or spherical silver space. Move yourself fully into the sense of this. In this way you'll be surrounded by a sphere of silver light. This is a place in future where you will go to remember, to reclaim, to know why you are here, to know your true full self, the ideas you left for yourself, and your relationship, your very private and individual relationship with divine right order. You will also experience feelings of excitement of a little child, yet sometimes frustrated, and sometimes feeling a little bit battered. I want you to try to feel yourself as an 8-year-old child. It's impossible not to notice that there are many memories, some of them painful, often accompanied by disharmonic energies associated with fetal integration. Just simply squashed up, packed away into your own emotional body. Now I want you to change the image a little bit, or the sense, the feeling. I want you to picture yourself now as a guardian of your own 8-year-old self. In the teardrop shape, in your tailbone. And I want you to feel as much compassion for this 8-year-old version of yourself as you greet it. So as best as you can, you visualize yourself as a grown-up, looking down into the face of your own 8-year-old self. But you'll do this as a parent of the Christos, tender yet strong, loving and wise. Now I want you to bend down on one knee so you come down to eye level and make deep eye contact with your 8-year-old self. If in future you wish to come here, your 8-year-old self will take you back to your fetal point, the first point of entry into this physical plane. And it's here you would come if your 8-year-old self had questions it wanted to put to you, or assistance you could provide it. Try to feel your 8-year-old and recognize its sense of relief as it realizes that you, representing